Hello, 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 and welcome to Coffee with the Carter Man. This time I have my light on. See there? All right, I got it right this time. And I have my coffee here. So grab your coffee, whatever beverage you have. 20 years ago, mine would have been a can of light beer, but those days are gone for over 20 years. But I have a great coffee mug today. Look at that. Look at that. My brother gave that to me for Christmas, and it's right on target. So, folks, let's do this thing, okay? Mm-mm. How sweet it is! All right, got a great show today. Great show today. Everybody knows the rules. We start off with the news, news and views potpourri. Then we go to the interview today. I have a great interview for you. Great, as Tony the Tiger would say, interview for you with a gentleman I've wanted to do an interview ever since we started. Um, he is a tremendous political operative. I mean, and I say that in a positive way. Plus, his insights are totally unique from his perspective. You'll see why in just a few minutes. All right. All right. First, let's get to our potpourri. And of course, it has to evolve all around the inauguration, which was, you know, as soon as the speech was over by Trump, I called my brother and we started laughing, just started laughing because we both said the same thing. We have never heard an inaugural address like that. I mean, to me, the most eloquent I ever heard, the first one I ever heard, by the way, was Dwight Eisenhower in 1952. You're saying, damn, I feel like I'm talking to Methuselah. You almost are. Dwight Eisenhower was my first, 1952. I was 6 years old. And the most eloquent I ever heard, of course, was John Kennedy. Ask not what you can do for your country. It was incredible. It was a wonderful speech. Still, I think the best ever given. But Trump's is the first time I ever heard a newly installed president just rip his predecessor apart with the guy sitting right there. Okay. Now, fortunately, we all know Joe had no idea where he was, and I think he kept asking Jill there, when do I get to go out and play? But nonetheless, the speech I thought it was a great speech. I loved everything he said. How about the other presidents? I mean, look, I'll make this quick, but I'm sorry, I can't help myself. Look at Clinton and Bush. Clinton looks like he has not had a meal since he left the White House. And Bush looks like he has not missed a meal since the Last Supper. I mean, these guys, come on, guys. You're all millionaires. Take care of yourself. Then you had Obama, Barack. Yeah, thank God. He's saying to himself, thank God I'm here alone and Michelle isn't here. But Barack, the hair. I mean, look, I'm not a big fan of Barack, but I don't personally dislike him. So, Barack, I have a hint for you. Just for men. Just for men. I'm starting to need a little myself here again. See there, my wife is already on me about it. Barack, just for men. All you have to leave it on is 5 minutes. 3, I think, is sufficient. But come on, Barack. Come on now. Let's go, folks. And Kamala decided to wear her sweatsuit. But she was either high as a kite or drunk as a skunk anyway, so it really didn't make any difference. Look at that look. Their part was a clown show. Trump, I thought, was great. He said what needed to be said. We're entering a new golden age because he's going to reverse everything Joe Biden did. I mean, there's no other way to put it. It's just that simple. All right. So great inauguration. I'm gonna play my favorite part for you real quick. Okay, it takes 2 minutes, and then I'm going to tell you why it's my favorite part and why it's so vitally important, as well as being, I think, just beautiful. Gary, can you roll that? Can you roll that for us? Incredible, incredible. Wow. Wow.
I have seen him in the watchfires of a hundred
Wow.
separate camps. They have built
All
their
right.
gates an altar in the evening dews and damps. I can read his righteous sentence in the dim but glaring lamps. His day is marching on.
All right. Good. Perfect. 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 Folks, I'm sorry. Sorry to get weepy eye, but that just touches my soul, and I have a feeling for a lot of you it does too. And there's a line in it that I think is vitally important for us to remember. Not only is that acknowledge where America came from, but there's one line that's vitally important. And some of you who are regular churchgoers are going to remember it. As he died to make men holy, let us die to make men free. Okay. I know the Methodist Church tried to change it to let us live to make men free back in '86 when they tried to wipe it out of their hymnal altogether, as did other churches. But that's an important line because, folks, we got our president in. He's going to be a great president. He has potential to be a great president. What he said at the inauguration, what he has already begun doing with what had 100 executive orders in the first day to try and help get our country back on track. It's vitally important, but you need to understand we won a battle with this election, but the war has just begun. The left is already launching lawsuits. Chuck Schumer is already stalling appointees. And at the National Prayer Service yesterday, you saw how vile these people can be. And I'm going to conclude the potpourri with this, but I got to talk about it. Look, I got to tell you something, folks. What Marion Edgar Butch Bud did with her little sermonette, 15 minutes at that presidential prayer breakfast was absolutely vile. It was inappropriate, it was tasteless, and it was offensive. This woman needs to be defrocked. She needs to be defrocked. That is a radical. I just did an email piece on it. Look, Trump summed it all up. He wants an apology, and rightly so. Look at the look on his family's face as this woman took advantage of him in a captive audience with his family to just not only insult, but assault the President of the United States. Okay? Butch is supposed to be a minister. Now, I have a little bit of expertise on the ministry because my dad was a Methodist minister for 50 years. In those 50 years, I never saw him do anything as absolutely appalling as what this woman did. Butch used the pulpit to assault a president of the United States. Butch, whatever Butch is. Look, let me tell you just honestly, If I walked into a church and I saw that in the pulpit, I would say, I don't know whether that's a man. I don't know whether it's a woman. I don't know whether it's a non-binary, the people she loves and told Trump he had to. I don't know what it is, but get it out of here. Okay? Because that is just, look at that. How would you like to have that as your minister? Did she say anything about the gospel? Did she say, that one thing I learned in those 50 years is that there are 5 most important words in the English language. And for a minister, they're pretty vital, okay? Those of you who are Christians know what they are. You must be born again. Did you hear that at all? She had a national pulpit, but she couldn't give the 5 most important words in the English language for Christians. She had to use it to insult and assault a president of the United States who was rightly appalled. Let me make a suggestion to Butch, okay? And I'm going to close with that. I got a suggestion for Butch. Butch, if you're really sincere, Butch, if you're really sincere about helping all the illegal, well, she didn't call them that, all these undocumented people, if you're really sincere, Butch, I have an idea for you. Your cathedral there, which should not be called the National Cathedral, it's an Episcopal church. I'm sorry, you can call it a cathedral, but get rid of the national, especially now. Butch, if you're really sincere about helping all these people, who, by the way, let me say parenthetically, my wife is from Honduras. She is a legal citizen. She worked hard for her citizenship. She didn't appreciate your relegating her people to being dishwashers and lawn mowers, okay, and scrubbing the floors. She didn't really appreciate that, Butch. So that even that part of it was offensive. But Butch, if you're really sincere about leaving all these people here, 15 million minimum, I got an idea, Butch. Your church there, your cathedral is 83,000 square feet. I did a little division here and taking the average apartment size here around where I live, that most of my wife's illegal, and she does have a lot of illegal friends and relatives, where they're living, taking their average apartment size, you could probably house 1,000 to 2,000 inside that edifice. If Butch, if you're sincere. Come on. Put your money where your big mouth is, Butch. Go out and get 1,000 to 2,000 of the illegal aliens and stick them in your cathedral you have there. All right? And by the way, Butch, an idea. Some of them could be Venezuelan gang members and such, and MS-13. Don't bring your transgenders in to shack up with them because they don't like them. Okay, so Butch, let's do it. Come on, there's a challenge for you. And folks, by the way, all of us need to contact the head of that church and tell him you need to get rid of this woman and defrock her. Okay, Sean, something or the other up there, and we have that address there, Gary. I'll get it. If not, I'll get it for us later. We need to let him. There we go. Thank you. There you go. Give him a call. Suggest to him, defrock her and turn that place into a home for illegal aliens. There you go. Hey, Sean. Hey, Sean, it's Carter. Got a suggestion for you. Folks, we need to do this. We're fed up. We as conservatives are fed up with being insulted and assaulted by these woke androgynous freaks. Okay? So that's my message for today. We heard hers. That's my message for today. There you go, Butch and Sean. And now let's get on to a happier note. All right. Whoa, man. Got to get this blood pressure down. Here we go. All right. Take a deep breath, Carter. Take a deep breath. Take a sip. There we go. All right. Now on to something far more positive and in the long run, far more important than what Butch does over there. Our guest today is a man that I have tremendous admiration for. He and his wife, Laura, both are true conservative leaders and have been for quite some time. Let me read you a little bit about Bob Parks' past, okay, about his track record. 20 years in print, television, and radio journalism. Started out as a Navy journalist, did a stint in Guam Tribune, worked as graphic designer for Fox Broadcasting Company in Hollywood. Hooray for Hollywood, all right? Has written for Men's News Daily, Breitbart, The Washington Times, Accuracy in Media. Has been a guest on C-SPAN, CNN, BCC, Fox News. I mean, this guy, he's got the creds. Yeah, Bob has the creds. Bob Parks has the creds. And when I first met him, he wrote, produced, edited, and created, I might add, the award-winning created cable access program, Black and Right, and was a senior producer for Media Research Center. Bob Parks, welcome to Coffee with the Carter Man. It's great to see you again.
Thank you, Carter. It's great talking to you.
Here we go. Show him the back of your shirt.
Oh, okay. Back in 2017, when the Patriots, actually it was 2016 when the Patriots, no, 2017, when the Patriots won the Super Bowl, they had the honor of going to the White House to see President Trump. And they gave him, as all teams do customarily, they gave him a jersey, kind of like this one. So my Trump 45 jersey, we got a replica copy, and so wear it appropriately.
Oh, I love it. Absolutely. I want to talk to you because you are unique. I mean, your background in the media is fantastic, but you and I have talked in the past, and we're always very direct, always very open. And I think one of the shockers to a lot of the hard left was the size of Trump's black vote. Okay. I think did he draw almost 20% of the male black vote this time?
I think it might have been a little higher. But yes.
Incredible. And we're seeing, I watch people like the Officer Tatum, great podcast, the Cartier family, 4 young guys, obviously from the hood, do a great job. All right. I watch, what's the sports guy's name? Has a great sports show.
Stephen A. Smith.
No. Stephen goes back and forth. All right. Sometimes Stephen can be pretty conservative, but it's a guy he argues with a lot. Heavyset guy. It'll come back to me.
Jason Whitlock.
Yeah. And I like Jason. How do you feel about Jason?
Well, we might get into this a little bit later, but there are people who, because they have the opportunity, they have the reach, some people can sort of shift according to whomever's paying the paycheck.
Well, yeah.
So and Jason has said some things that obviously did rile the left and kind of pushed him out of where he was. So I will give him some cred. There are other people, though, that have been embraced by the conservative movement, because conservatives tend to be very tolerant and open. And one thing that I did notice when I went to the first big Tea Party in Washington, D.C. in 2009, that conservatives tend to be very generous.
Yes.
When I was there at the Capitol and I looked over and everybody saw the hundreds of thousands of people there, I also saw dollar signs. And that's when we started getting groups like Tea Party Patriots and Freedom Works, all of a sudden these people came along and became conservative leaders who weren't elected. With all due respect, and I appreciate when you sort of introduced me as a leader, I was never elected to anything. And a lot of these people, one of the things that really bothered Laura and I in 2015 and 2016, when Donald Trump was running, there were a lot of conservatives who were very much against Donald Trump.
Right.
A lot of them preferred Ted Cruz. And I mean, Rich Lowry, for example, we see him a lot on Fox News, Fox Business. They are rehabbing his image because in 2016, January of 2016, he came out with an issue of National Review signed by 16 conservative leaders, Dana Loesch, Brent Bozell, Katie Pavlich. And the funny thing is, and you can take it with however you want, the only person out of that group who publicly apologized for the damage done in not unifying against with Donald Trump in 2016 was Glenn Beck. He's the only one who's publicly apologized. But as soon as Donald Trump was elected, all of these people now started instructing us how we should support Donald Trump. Oh, and by the way, watch my TV show, listen to my radio show, support our advertisers, make some donations here to our nonprofits. And it was very insulting. And to this day, a lot of them are still acting as the people who should tell us all how to be supportive of Donald Trump. Lastly, to one of my latest pet peeves is Leo Terrell, Leo 2.0. We see him all over Fox News.
Right.
I was living and working in Los Angeles in the 90s. And I used to listen to Larry Elder a lot on, I think it was KABC. And depending on the issue, and a lot of times it was a racial issue involving police or whatever, Larry would have on Leo Terrell. Leo Terrell is a civil rights attorney. And he took every opportunity to call any and all Republicans racist. Cops were murderers. And all the way up until 2016, he was calling Republicans racist, Donald Trump racist. But then he saw dollar signs. He saw how tolerant the conservatives were. And a lot of times, too, we as conservatives don't do good vetting.
Yep.
We let too many people come in, whether we're wowed by a dress that says Trump on it at the Grammys, and we bring this woman in, Joy Villa, and all the women were seal clapping about how beautiful the dress was, but they didn't look and see that she was part of Occupy Seattle, and she was a liberal activist, and she eventually got into the Trump family orbit before she imploded. And so Leo Terrell is another grifter. And Stacey Dash, Candace Owens, a lot of them.
Now you can't. All right. A lot of folks are going to be shocked because you just said Candace Owens. To them, look, let me say something and see if you agree with it. Look, if you're conservatives are the biggest suckers in the world, okay? To me, I don't care about race. I never have. I wasn't raised that way. But most conservatives, if a person is black and they are smart enough to say, I'm a conservative, conservatives fall all over themselves. I've never seen anything like it. If the same person was white and they had a bad track record, they say, really, you didn't act like it. But if they're black, they say, wow, this is incredible. We got our own black person, which I don't care for. And sometimes I feel like maybe Candace kind of figured that out. What do you think?
Well, first, conservatives have been browbeaten and been called racist for so many years that we tend to be set ourselves up to be suckers for the next shiny thing. And so when a person like Candace Owens came along, Laura and I started doing the digging. And we tried to warn people. We've written several pieces on our website about Candace Owens, Joy Villa. And the thing about one of the things that we found that was really striking, because we did the digging and we went to her website, where she said that basically, and I'm paraphrasing, that it's the young people's time to take over the conservative movement and let the older conservatives die off peacefully in our sleep, she hoped. Okay. And it was time for the millennials to take over. And she did not realize that some of us did the digging, went to her websites where she joked about Donald Trump's penis size. I mean, she was totally vile against conservatives and Donald Trump, but she saw the dollar signs. And when people like Rush Limbaugh said that she called her brilliant on numerous occasions, people did not do the vetting.
Yeah. Well, you know what?
And real quick too, there was I think it was last year or the year before, and we created a video where she was on David Webb's show on Fox Online, and she was saying how she voted Republican in the last election, and then a few months later, she was in front of Congress, and she was under oath. And under oath, she said she was a Democrat. So she either lied to Congress or she lied to David Webb in front of hundreds of thousands of conservatives. These are the people we need to watch out for. But the problem is the vetting isn't done.
The vetting's not done. I'm telling you, I really believe that if I got to be honest with you, if I were black and I was in politics, I would become a conservative, because if you're black and you're a liberal, you got a million of them. If you're black and you're conservative, you have a shot at moving up the escalator very, very quickly, in my opinion. And I don't like it. I think it's insulting. It's stupid of white people, and it's insulting to black people. But I don't see it changing anytime soon. I think Candace can write her own ticket for as long as she wants to now. I'll tell you, you remember we all embraced, and folks, some of you are going to remember this, okay? Let me see if you remember this. What was the name of the black woman who at the beginning of the first Trump administration, the conservatives were falling all over? She had been on The Apprentice.
Omarosa.
She was no more conservative than my friend Big Leo down the street, who admits two things to me. He doesn't like conservatives, and he doesn't particularly like a lot of white people. I think that was her position, but all of a sudden, all of us were just throwing our arms around her and just saying, oh, she is like, the only begotten daughter, right? Am I wrong?
Well, Laura used to watch episodes of The Apprentice when it was on, and there's still places you can find it. But if it's obvious to a lot of us that the people who blindly embraced Omarosa never watched The Apprentice, because if they did, they would have seen she is a train wreck coming. It was just a matter of when and to what degree, because she was a backstabber.
Right.
I mean,
right.
She was a big time backstabber. So that we saw this coming, but just again, we saw Joy Villa coming. We saw Stacey Dash coming. We saw Candace Owens coming. She's on the outs now because of a lot of her anti-Semitic commentary over the last few months. You see these people coming, and it takes a lot of hubris. For example, let's just say, I personally have been a Republican for 30 years. This year is 30 years. Right. Okay. But when I first decided to change my party registration, and within a few months of that, I decided to start doing a TV show or podcast or whatever and claim to be an expert. People would look at me. You can't become something quickly and become an expert at it. So when we have people like Leo Terrell and all these people who are new to the party, all of a
Right.
sudden now instructing us how to be good conservatives, it defies common sense to accept these people without looking at what are the motives.
Right. Right. Well, you nailed it. And the motives, it, you know, the motives with a lot of white people, in my opinion, is sycophancy. Okay. It just is. I used to have, and I hate saying used to, but I had a guy who was a black friend who was like a brother to me. Okay. Like a brother to me. And we used to talk about what you're talking about now. And he would try and explain to me, that there is he was like you. He wasn't fooled by anybody. He wasn't fooled by anybody. Unfortunately, Rogelio had a car crash and died about a couple months ago, he was only like 40 years old. Nicest guy you ever met in your life. But again, he was like a brother to me. But he would tell me, one of the reasons I like you, Carter, is you're not fooled. You're not fooled by anybody who comes along. And if they have a black skin and says, I'm conservative, you say, oh, well, then you're my friend. I don't do that with them. I don't do it with anybody who's white. Okay. But yet we see it over and over again. And some of those like you who should be elevated way at the top because you are honest and have always been, we're not seeing it. And it bothers me a lot. I'm just telling you. How do you feel about it?
Well, to reflect on something we talked privately about on the phone, my father and I, my late father and I, used to have phone calls where I was living on the West Coast, he was on the East Coast, and we would talk. And he would tell me about an example where he would go to a supermarket, and this white person would bump into him, or he'd go to the post office and a white person would cut in front of him in line. And these examples would come up fairly frequently and for a long duration of time, over many years. And so one day, and we, in our generation, we were always very careful about how we spoke to our fathers.
Right.
And so I said to him, so Dad, what you're saying is all white people are racist, except the ones you know. There was a pause on the phone. And I said, oh, Lord, okay, I did it. And then he started laughing. He got it. So when it comes to this whole race thing, the thing I think is most frustrating, back in around 2006, somebody left a comment on our website, and he asked me what my impression of the Jim Crow era was.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I only knew about the Jim Crow era what I learned in school, which is virtually nothing. So I decided I'd do a little bit of research so I could respond to it and maybe even do a piece. And so I figured I'd go to the most neutral place I could. So I went to pbs.org.
Oh, my God.
And they actually did a segment on Jim Crow. So I went to the website, I went to their page, and there were two columns, the Democrat Party and the Republican Party. Now, the top line at the Republican Party was that they were an abolitionist party to slavery. I said, wow, they don't teach this in school.
No.
Then I went to the Democrat Party column, clicked on it, and you know what the Democrat Party's original slogan was? The white man's party. When I said that, okay, all the gloves are off here. And so I wrote a piece called The Democrat Race Lie. And it took me many months and subsequently years to complete it, where I basically just did a timeline, a very simple timeline of the events, starting with the founding of the Republican Party, and then all of the different events that happened during American history involving racism, slavery, the Civil War. I mean, and if a black person were to read that, and I put hyperlinks so it wasn't me just making stuff up. I put links to just about everything on that every line, so people could see just who the racists were in this country. And if you look at how Democrats talk to Black people today, they assume Black people are ignorant,
Yep.
stupid,
Yep.
and that in that way, easily pliable to be able to inject some kind of emotion to get a visceral response and keep them on their side.
Yeah.
If you look at some of the things, the murderous things that have happened at the hands of Democrats toward Black people, the denying of the consistent voting against civil rights acts
That's right. That's
through
right.
the years, the slaughter of Black people, the assassination of Black politicians, you will see that if you are Black and you are a Democrat, as Malcolm X said, you're chump.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Malcolm X made some pretty strong statements about that. And I look at it, and the Democrats with the mainstream media have just done, and the academia have just done a great job on distorting history, totally distorting history. Look, if I'm just telling you what, it's so difficult sometimes to discuss race, because I was just going to say, if I were Black, I would, but I don't know what I'd do if I were Black. You remember the book Black Like Me? Did you ever read that?
I haven't read it, but I know the book.
I think a guy's name was Griffin. Okay. And I read it as a high school kid. It was a pretty good book, but there was an element missing. Black Like Me, folks, for you folks who are saying, what the hell is he talking about now? Black Like Me was a book written by a guy who tinted his skin somehow through injections and all. So he looked like a Black person, and went and lived in the South for a while to see how they were treated. Remember, this was in the late 50s that he did this. So it was pretty stunning. But a Black person pointed out, you can't be Black by coloring your skin. It's a lot more than that. And let me tell you something, and see how you feel about this. I'm going to say it, if I were Black, I would have, well, I'll put it in context for you, Bob. One day, Big Leo was driving by the house. I live in a deliberately, my wife and I live in a lower middle income neighborhood, because that's what we like. I was raised in inner city Baltimore, so that's what I like. Mixed neighborhood, lower middle income. He was driving by, and he stopped and said, "Hey, Kyle, what are you doing?" And I went over, he rolled down us when we were talking. And as we were talking, I said, "I got to ask you a question." I said, he's about 70. You're from North Carolina. Yeah, that's where I was raised. I said, "Well, how did it feel when you would go to the park and there'd be a colored water fountain or a colored restroom?" And he said, "Well, it didn't feel good." I said, "Well, what'd you do?" He said, "I didn't do nothing." What do you expect me to do? I did as I was told. Let me say this, and you react to it. I'm going to say it, if I were Black and my parents or me as a child had been treated like that, I'm sorry, I'd have a difficult time getting that out of my system, and I would resent it to this day. What do you say about that?
I guess I could see that point of view. However, and again, this is not meant to. Don't take this personally.
Yeah.
A few years ago, I used to be a frequent guest on Sun News in Canada. It was their conservative channel, and when they would have me on as a guest, they would have me talk about the news of the day. That includes the economy. That includes environmental issues. That included entertainment. That included sports. Whatever it was, I was not brought on to talk about race, because that just seems to be, if you're Black, you're brought on, and that's what dominates the conversation.
You're right.
Personally, when people ask me what I want to be, how I'd like to be referred to as, I'm a Bostonian. Okay, I'm not an African American, because first of all, I've been to Africa when I was in the Navy, and I have nothing in common with the black people there. If you put me in the bush for a day, I would be food. Okay. So, and the black people there, they speak with the Queen's English. They roll their R's when they speak. It's nothing like what we hear black people talking about here. So when it comes to issues of race, I like to look at things as being an American.
Right.
And that perspective, of course, because race has a lot of things to do with certain things, that the race will come up. But, and again, I apologize for maybe taking your conversation in a different direction.
That's all right.
But one of the things that's also one of Laura and my pet peeves, when I started working in Hollywood, it seems like as soon as you get a job and you walk in the door, your IQ jumps 50 points, because all of a sudden you're amongst people who are smarter than the American people. They look down on the American people, and it's reflected in their programming where they dumb things down. One of the things that was popular about the videos that I for my TV show and the videos I produced at the Media Research Center for MRC TV is I never dumbed things down. I would we would make obscure references to things, and people would say, what is that? And they would go look it up, and then they rewatch the video. And that's why we got so many hits, because of repeat views. So, so when I hear people in the media refer to as everyday Americans, ordinary people, well, if you are talking about Americans as ordinary, you obviously think of yourself as extraordinary.
That's exactly right.
And there's an arrogance to that is just sickening. The way that,
you know, it's so funny you say that. And I'll tell you, yesterday I was talking to Ann Shockett. Ann Shockett is the former president of the National Federation of Republican Women. Ann is a pretty well-to-do Jewish woman, okay? And she was deeply offended by how does she pronounce her name? Klobuchar, that nasty senator from Minnesota who used the inauguration to give a speech against Donald Trump, okay, which I thought was really in poor taste. And she was deeply offended. I said I hated what she did, her attacking Trump. She said, I'll tell you what I hated. I hated her referring to average, ordinary, everyday Americans. Exactly what you just said. And she's a very wealthy Jewish woman, a Republican leader. So, yeah, 100%. We're a little tired of that.
Yes, it's very condescending. But again, it tells you what they think. And it's reflected in entertainment. I mean, turn on any primetime TV network and you're going to see shows about murder, or you're going to see TV shows that are supposedly comedies that are not funny. I used to, when I was working for Fox, I worked for on-air promo. So we made promos for all the TV shows, and it was amazing how many times we would sit down and have to watch an entire show to try to find a funny part for a 15-second promo. Yeah. Okay. So, and the thing is that you look at the messaging and how all of these commercials now have gay couples, interracial couples. And I personally, I'm not going to name any names because I don't even remember some of these people, but I remember the conversations while I was in some of these edit bays in the post houses, while I was freelancing around Hollywood. And there are a lot of producers who are white who would not let their daughter date a black man, but they make these promos that this is how we're all supposed to be. Why can't people just love who they love? But you'll have these activists who will denigrate an interracial marriage unless it's a movie star or a professional athlete, multi-million-dollar athlete who are in an interracial relationship, and those are people are celebrated. The hypocrisy is just a constant with the left.
It's a constant, and you are, should point out, you are in an interracial marriage and have been for what, decades, I guess, right?
Yes, we Laura actually found me and hunted me down. I'll say that, um, it worked out great.
Yeah,
It's been a blessing to this day. But the thing is, you shouldn't be trying to. People love who they love,
that's it.
if for example we're told that we're supposed to tolerate gay marriages, then if it's an interracial marriage, what or a heterosexual marriage, a white marriage, a Latino marriage, or whatever, whose business is it? It's not your business. These same people who say stay out of people's bedrooms are the first people to come in and tell you what you should watch. And then you watch Netflix, and you're constantly seeing graphic images of sex between heterosexuals and gay people, and again, hypocrisy.
It's the hypocrisy. And my feeling is I don't care what they do. I don't care. I just don't want it shoved on me constantly. Like at the beginning, that I talked about that quote minister, Butch over there at the
Hmm.
National Cathedral, shoving it on us that we're supposed to embrace transgenders. Well, uh, do you feel strongly about what she did as I do? I feel very strongly about it.
Well, here's my thing. I have been covering politics for so many years that I find it's very hard for me to get emotional about things,
Yeah.
because I've been an observer and I've had to report on things in an objective way. So these people don't bother me, and because first of all, if it's not this pastor today, it's going to be someone who's going to say something stupid and boneheaded tomorrow. So
Yeah.
the thing that they have that is again part of the hypocrisy theme is when they are in power, the Democrats, the left, they make demands and they shove it down our throats.
Yeah.
When Republicans and
Yeah.
conservatives are in charge, that's when Democrats demand that we govern together,
Yes.
that there's unity, and Don. What the beauty of Donald Trump is, not just because he's not a politician, he's a New Yorker. New Yorkers don't care. New Yorkers will shove it down your throat, just like Donald Trump during his inaugural address was ripping Joe Biden. And you looked at the C-SPAN camera, had to zoom in to avoid seeing the expression on Biden and Harris's face, as basically Donald Trump is in a very nice way is ripping them to shreds to their faces.
To their faces. Absolutely to their faces. I have never seen an inaugural address like that. It just where the incoming president lays it out that the outgoing president messed up everything he touched, which Biden most certainly did. Which
Well,
Biden most certainly right.
my favorite part of that inaugural address is what you showed in your open. And once I'll tell you about it, you will, every time you see it from now on, you're going to be looking for it.
Right.
When the Navy Glee Club came walking in, they're walking and their arms are going back and forth. You had some, how's the best way to put it? Some porky people who, even though they were sitting in front of their chairs, extended out into the aisle. And when the
Yes.
guys were going by like this, they're not going to break stride. So
No.
those arms started bumping people out of the way.
They were,
Now go back and watch it.
Bob, they were knocking them out of the way. I just couldn't stop laughing. They were literally, they would knock people out of the way.
Well, stay in your lane, stay behind your chair, but some people just sort of kind of exceeded the allotted space, as it were.
All right. We are, I hate to keep an eye on the clock, but I have to. And we are almost out of time. What if you right now decided that you wanted to get out of politics and you've accomplished so much, what would you most want to be remembered for?
Well, let's put it this way. I got into politics not because I wanted to. When I was working in Los Angeles back in the 90s, one day one of my elementary school sons came home and said, "Daddy, what's a blowjob?" And because that's what all the kids in elementary school was talking about, thanks to Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky.
Oh,
And I just threw up my hands and said, I am done with the Democrats. But I did not know that going to work in Hollywood, that was something that I was supposed to keep to myself. I ended up losing my job. One of the things I noticed when I first walked in to some of these facilities, there's a bulletin board, with pieces of paper tacked to it, stapled pieces of paper from different networks with names and social security numbers of people who should not be hired. Didn't say why. There's your blacklist. Okay. I was blacklisted. And it made me an activist because I saw, I went from being one of the most sought after graphic designers on a particular graphics platform in Hollywood. I became the people who made the platform made me the West Coast tech rep because I did things on it they didn't know it could do. And then I was brought into post houses. But then when they found out I was a Republican, all that work dried up. I ended up losing my house, lost my car, and ended up having to move, and I eventually moved back to Massachusetts. So they created me. That was not my chosen career. What I'm hopefully this year, I will launch my company. And Laura has some businesses that we want to also launch. And I think what's great about it with the pro-Trump, pro-business agenda, it's going to be a lot easier to do than, let's say, if we had to deal with things under Kamala Harris. So if I have to be remembered for something, I would like to be remembered for what I'm about to do, as opposed to what I've done.
I love that. I love that. And that is the perfect positive attitude and the perfect positive spot for us to stop talking right now and get to predictions, which I would like you to stay around for, because there are a lot of important things for us to take a look at and predict what we're going to see happen. So Gary, Sam, come on in and let's do our predictions. There we go. There we go. All right. Are you on, Gary? Can I hear you, Gary?
I would hope so. Can you
Okay,
hear me?
now I can hear you perfectly. All right. Predictions. We predict what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks, couple months. And here's my prediction. I'll start off. I predict, and a lot of people I think are going to stand up and cheer, that this guy right here, and I've put the scarlet P on his chest now for pardoned. I think this guy is going to have hell to pay for what he did to the American people. I think he believes that now that he has a pardon, that he can walk around scot-free and get away with his gain of function research and his COVID extravaganza. But I think Rand Paul has made it clear he's not stopping. He said, he may be pardoned, but he's still coming after him as chairman of the Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee. And I have a friend who is a former law professor at Princeton. Okay. I won't say his name to protect his privacy, but, he won't mind. Jeffrey Satinover. He said there's something you have to keep in mind. Yeah, he's been pardoned. He said, but I'm telling you this as a former law professor, constitutional law professor at Princeton. Just because you've been pardoned does not mean you cannot be charged with a crime for which you were pardoned. Doesn't mean you can't be indicted. Doesn't mean you can't be tried and even convicted. And he said, so this man could still face all of that despite the pardon. And he said, and if he does, he's going to end up bankrupt, which is exactly what I would like to see to this villainous little monster. So there's my prediction, that we're going to see this guy get his just due. What do you got for us, Bob?
Well, let's put it this way. If I was good at predictions, I could tell you who would win the Super Bowl this year, down to the point.
Eagles.
So-
Eagles.
But
I'll
you
give
can
that.
now. They've
The
made
Eagles.
it that way in the past.
The
Now,
Eagles.
granted, seeing how my team isn't in the playoffs this year, I will put on the Super Bowl just for entertainment. But to answer your question, something that Joe Biden said when he was pardoning people, he was doing it because he did not want to see people incur the numerous charge of defending themselves, the legal fees, and the trauma that goes along with that. Well, they didn't think about that with Michael Flynn. They didn't think about that with George Papadopoulos or any of the myriad of people in the Trump administration or activists that when the DOJ came after them, that they had to incur hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees, even if they were found not guilty. But the
Yep.
damage was done, that they had to remortgage their homes and all that. So I'm looking forward to the sob stories from the media about how these poor people, like maybe General Milley, or maybe Anthony Fauci, or Cassidy Hutchinson, or all these people, these poor people who are going to have to pay all of these hundreds of thousands of dollars of legal bills, and the sympathy that we're going to have for them, despite the glee they had when conservatives were being ruined.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. I love it. I love it. I hope that prediction comes through. Gary?
As much as I like your idea, Carter, I don't think it's going to happen. I think before that man left, there's towers and stacks of paperwork protecting these scumbags. If you made it to the point where the Democrats siphon money to you on a daily basis, you're part of the know and nothing's going to ever happen to you. That's what I think, sadly, about that topic.
Right.
But I'll give you the same prediction I gave you in the last show. I am quite confident within the next week, all J6ers are out of that shitty, disgusting, damp, dark prison.
Wait a minute, you didn't tell me we could cuss on this show.
You can cuss all you want, Bob.
Too late now. Next time.
Sadly, that's a problem of mine. Carter doesn't have it. He's been on television quite a lot. I just sit in the background of television and edit it out when he does it. No, I think that's the only prediction I have. I think, sadly, even just sitting here watching you guys discuss these topics, it's just it's a never-ending cycle of the same things from both parties, from both personalities across the board. There's not much you're ever going to do about it. It's a business, and that business is going to continue to run no matter how bad it is. You remember when Ford put plastic parts in their transmissions and every one of them failed and nobody would buy a Ford? Ford's still in business. So, sadly, I don't think it's going to change. I am glad he's there because our lives are going to improve. But all of those evil people who have done so many wrong things will not be held accountable for any of their actions. If it were you or me, yes, we absolutely would.
All right.
Fauci's going to continue living in one of his big houses he probably owns, and nobody's going to touch him.
All right. That's so damn depressing.
It is, but it's a reality.
It's a reality. I'm going to finish with a second prediction that the price of eggs will come back down from $9 a dozen.
That's
All right,
a good
folks.
prediction.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. It has been great, Bob. Thank you. It was terrific. I appreciate it, folks. Come back next week. In the meantime, get out there, stay strong, and let's do this thing.